Today's episode of the Mind Sculptors podcast is sponsored by TCG Player, your source for all your trading card game needs. Use our link in the description the next time you get your cards to help support the show. Today's episode is also made possible by our Patreon subscribers. If you want to support the show directly, head over to patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors and you can become part of the SCULPTY family today. Or if you don't want to do any of that, leave a like and comment on YouTube or a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as an offering to Algorithm Jesus.
With arms wide open.
Oh, see, I was gonna do, should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to, I don't remember the words. It's Odd Lakeside, because that's the song that we sing on New Year's Day.
Wait, why are you singing that?
Because it's our 150th episode.
Oh, I was singing Creed.
I realize that. I'm aware of what you were singing. So not only is it our 150th episode, this is your 50th episode as the co-host.
Woohoo! I joined on episode 100.
Yeah, episode 100. Huh. Welcome everybody to the Mind Sculptors. I'm Cal.
Hello, I am also your co-host as of 50 episodes, Ian. Now, you may think, wow, 150 episodes and 50th episode milestone, we're doing something special. Mm-hmm. No, we are talking about Assassin's Creed. Any sort of celebration will be relegated to a potential next week's episode. Until then, cease your joy.
No, except next week's episode is power rankings, so it's like...
Fuck. Sequentially, this is the 149.25 episode.
Something that we have historically on this channel been really bad at doing is remembering and planning in the like broadest of terms, but is remembering like milestones.
No, Cal, don't tell them. It's a big secret. Nobody knows.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So 150th episode is wild. I've been doing this podcast since like October of 2020. It was when the first episode came out. So almost 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, just everybody who's been listening and continues to listen. I greatly appreciate you. And for Ian, who joined to the main cast 50 episodes ago, thanks.
Hello. I have absorbed your thanks and am appreciative in return. Is that... Yeah, that was good.
That was perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, that's great. So I can't think of any like Assassin's Creed references right now that I'm trying. The thing is my brain is just like, wake the fuck up, samurai, but that's the wrong game. That's Cyberpunk. So
we're gonna dive off the tower of cEDH into a hay bale.
We're gonna kill some Templars today.
Yeah. We're gonna accidentally kill a citizen, but it only gave us a little bit of attention, apparently. Assassin's Creed. Yeah, there was nothing more funny than like going through the set and seeing what cards were like, oh yeah, this is definitely Assassin's Creed. Because I was like an OG Assassin's Creed guy, right? Like, I think I got like up to Black Flag, but I didn't play the Egyptian set or...
I played like, Odyssey. Odyssey was really fun.
Yeah, and it looked really cool. Like, don't get me wrong, like a lot of these were not lack of interest. It's just like it was post, college, past gamer period when I was doing other stuff, right? So like... I didn't play Odyssey. I didn't play the Viking one, but my old roommate did. So at least I like know the characters a little bit from that. So there's definitely a little bit of space in between for knowledge.
Sorry, if you see me looking outside randomly, it's because I live in Louisville and I'm playing my favorite game, which is that fireworks or is that a gunshot?
What a classic, one I am familiar with, unfortunately, as I lived in major cities for a decent amount of my life.
Well, the issue is that we live in Kentucky, so like it is a 50-50.
Yeah.
It could be either.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I wasn't huge into Assassin's Creed. Like I played them. Assassin's Creed Black Flag is like one of my all-time favorite games.
I think that's a lot of people. Black Flag is like very well renowned in the gaming community, right?
It is a generically good, well, not generically good. It is a just good game. Like it's not like Assassin's Creed 2, right? Which is a good Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah.
It's just a good game.
Yeah. 95% of Google users like Black Flag. Yeah.
Well, that turns out people like to be pirates. Pirates are fun. But anyway, unfortunately, we're not going to be talking about Edward Kenway. But
does he even have a card?
He does.
Mm-hmm. He does.
And the what's the name of the ship? The Jackdaw. The Jackdaw has a card too. So
Edward's like actually for me he's like close. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think it's a cool card. It's like going to be a Buick commander for sure. Like it combines so many things that I love in casual commander that I can't not.
Right.
But yeah, so we're going to be talking about Assassin's Creed today, which as far as the set goes, it is around the same size as March of the Machine Aftermath. It's like very similar in that regard.
It's just a little guy.
Yeah, it's just a little guy. It's not a draft set, so it has a lot more top-down design than we're used to in modern legal sets.
Right.
So it'll be interesting, but let's go through this. Let's start off with the creatures here. We've got Hookblade Veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Hookblade Veteran is a 1/2 human assassin. You're going to hear me say human assassin a lot.
A good amount. Yeah.
That only costs 1 blue, and it says as long as it's your turn, Hookblade Veteran has flying. So this is a good Malcolm card, good Timna card, good Yuriko card.
Yeah, it's not a Malcolm card, I don't think, but yeah.
Well, I guess yeah.
So I mean, this is literally just like if you are one of the people still playing Edric or Yuriko, this is a card that fits in that deck pretty well, and it has 2 toughness, so you don't have to be like, oh no, Bowmasters.
My Bowmasters.
Yeah. That's really the extent of the intenseness of this, which I do think Yuriko does get some kind of shiny new toys for this set, I will say.
Yeah, I was actually
every single one, right? But it's definitely not irrelevant, right?
Yeah. You said something in your video that I just got done doing for you where you were talking about Yuriko and you're like, I think you guys should be playing Emrakul. And I was like, I agree with that. Mm-hmm. I was just like looking at the decks and I was just like, that seems like a logical. We took a big old dump on Yuriko last week, so it's like I feel like a little bad and I want to give it a little bit of like some positive attention.
Sorry, Yuriko players.
Sorry, your deck is bad. But yeah, Hookblade Veteran, solid little 1/2.
Not much really to say. Yeah, just a dorky little flyer for the decks that want that.
Next commander, we've got another 5-color commander. I can't say his last name. It's Ezio. Ezio is a 3/2 human assassin that's legendary, has menace. Says assassin spells you cast have free running, which free running is you may cast the spell for its free running cost if you dealt combat damage to a player this turn with an assassin or commander. And the free running cost that your assassins get is black. It also says whenever Ezio deals combat damage to a player, you may pay Wooburg if that player has 10 or less life. When you do, that player loses the game.
Yeah. So some interesting things about this mechanic that we're going to be talking about a lot with free running, right? Is that they did template it so that it's not just really linear for this set, right? So like some people are kind of annoyed by that design. Some people really like that design. TLDR, free running works with your commander, and that's why we're going to be talking about a number of different cards as we go through the set review, because they would kind of be dookie if they were only associated with assassins, but specifically being relegated to commanders as well kind of makes them a lot better, right? There's also, something to be said about, like, you can build this deck in the way that I think everybody's thinking about building it, which is, I assume you're going to get to in a second, which is like the other outlet for 5-color Luris, right? And because it's a 2-mana value commander that has 5 colors in its color identity, do that activated ability. You can have Luris in the command zone as long as permanents in your deck don't go above 3 mana value, much like they do with the Jensen Luris decks. People are excited about this over Jensen, I guess, which is like Jensen fixes your Bring to Light, and I don't really see what this necessarily does, but that's me. I also think it's kind of interesting that you could also build this deck completely differently, just as a play Ezio, sneak in, attack with Ezio, play an Arcane adaptation, and then just like black sneak in a Nulamog or whatever is like kind of
so my way of looking at this is I actually think that this is the better commander for the way people play Turbo Najeela. I think this is a better commander for that build than Najeela.
Okay. Walk me through it.
So my logic is that I think Najeela requires you to have like the working pieces of Najeela, right? You want to have your Derevis, you want to have your what's the creature that makes the treasures, like you want to have the combos and stuff, and that doesn't layer particularly well with the Nas package.
Sure.
You do get the like density of your win cons for sure, but we've seen a lot is that because of that density and because of that build, their card advantage has been really lacking.
Right. And I will say, I've kind of messed around with some Jensen like stuff in the past. And one thing I did find is like green-white was an awful amount of investment for mana into those, right? But like a generic mana and a black mana is really, really easy if your plan is to go like ding dong Turbo Nas Brain, right? Like
and I think it makes more sense. It's much more real, like you feel much better about casting Culling the Weak with this in your command zone than you do with Najeela, where it's like part of your combo. And I just think the way people wanted to build Turbo Najeela, it's just like better suited for this commander. I don't even know if like Luris is necessarily wrong or right as a companion.
Yeah, and I think people are going to experiment with both, right? Like I definitely know I messed around with Jensen sans Luris and like didn't hate that either, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with Luris, you get some very obvious advantages to it. But I think also without it, you get some pretty obvious advantages, which is like, the heuristic study, which is like the whole thing that like ROG size basically built around, right? So I think if it were me and I was playing the like no bad cards Najeela deck, I would be much more inclined to play Ezio over Najeela because of the fact that I feel like my commander.
I think it's sort of a different deck, but I get what you're saying, right? Because like Najeela, the whole point of no bad Najeela is that like you have the creature combos to rely on if things go wrong, right? Whereas with this deck, it's much more like, oh, okay, like we're just booming and zooming. You know what I mean?
And I think that's like a difference in philosophy, right? Whereas I look at Najeela and it's when I look at decks and I look at like the win con packages, I want them to generally layer in some form or fashion. And I think that's kind of always been my issue with no bad cards Najeela is that the win con packages just don't layer at all.
No, yeah, I agree completely.
And I think that is like a huge reason why the deck struggles right now is because it can't smoothly pivot from one direction to the other. And so I think that you're going to have I think Rogsai really I think exemplifies this really well right now, where having a more tuned and focused game plan is much more effective. And I think there is a lot of good reason to want to be on 5 colors for that type of strategy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you get access to white for Savine's Reclamation, for Silence, for Grand Abolisher, and you get access to green for, Culling Ritual, right? Like, it's like
you get Culling Ritual, you get
Tinderwall,
Tinderwall, you get Worldly Tutor, like you get
Spirit Guide. Yep.
yeah, like you get so many good cards out of it, and that's kind of my thought of it. Is like,
Yeah.
if I was playing 5-color Turbo, I'd be much more interested in this as a
I think
commander than Agila.
this makes the fastest 5-color deck. I think that's like pretty safe to assume.
100%.
Is like as soon as this card comes out, it is the fastest 5-color deck out there right now. You know.
Yeah, 100%.
It's the 5-color rock slide. Obviously, the difference between 0 and 2 is not trivial, right? Like I can't stress that enough, right?
Right.
But it's you know the cost of 2 colors.
Right. Yeah. But that's kind of my thought with it.
Yeah.
As a whole. I think the Luris build is interesting. I'd have to see more of it.
I'm honestly super unenthused about the Luris variant. Like I've never understood the Jensen Luris kind of hype. I've always thought it was sort of a mid archetype. Realistically,
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah,
I thought it was like kind of interesting because of how it layers with like Hermit Druid and stuff like that. Like it just like your win cons all layer over each other, which is interesting. But I kind of agree. I was never super enthused about it either.
Yeah.
But you know, to each their own. Let's look at Tax Collector. This is a 2/2 human advisor that costs a generic and a white. And when Tax Collector enters the battlefield, you choose one until you can choose either tax or arrest. Tax is until your next turn. Spells your opponent's cast cost 1 generic more to cast. And arrest is detain target creature an opponent controls. Now, detain, if you started playing Magic in the past 10 years, you wouldn't know what detain is. Detain is until your next turn, that creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. That's what the OG Lavinia did.
I know, right?
It's taking me back.
I remember the old days.
Back in my day, Lavinia was a detention sort of card. Anyway, Tax Collector is an interesting card. What are your thoughts on it?
I think like the more the format sticks around, the more we sort of see like flicker type strategies get more and more legs. I like this card in like a tempo-y style deck. Once again, one that you're trying to like flicker a decent amount, right? Like even if you like get this and flicker it once, it's like, okay, I've just sort of time walked the entire table, right? Like realistically. So, you know, decks that obviously naturally have a flicker game plan are definitely going to be doing a lot with this. I've been thinking for a long time that there is like a Jeskai flicker strategy that's sort of out there underplayed at the current moment. I think it's got a lot of tools. There are Jeskai flicker plus, right? Like so you can add green, add black, add whatever really. But I think this card is really interesting for that. And then like on the other hand, like it's just 2 very decent effects on a body, right? It can buy you a whole turn, right, with the tax ability, or you know, you're against a Malcolm or whatever, and like you think they might have Glinthorn next turn, just like detain it, you know?
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is great in Yorion.
Right, and like that's the style of deck that like I know is not very popular, or like a Brago, right? But like if you are trying to do anything with flicker, this is one of the best flicker type effects that's been printed.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, would certainly I think people truly don't fully grasp how like backbreaking detain can be. It's actually kind of frustrating.
I like there was a while there where I was playing old Lavinia in Grand Arbiter because it would just be a 3-mana one-sided like complete house, like it would shut off their mana rocks and like everything until the end of turn. You know what I mean?
If you haven't seen the original Lavinia, it really is.
It puts in work.
It's a bitch. But yeah, no, this is a cool card. I think it is. It definitely will have its place in those type of flicker decks. I think my question is like the whole like what is your commander for that? You know, what's the whole like strategy behind it? But I do think it's very interesting. I think that this is a card that is definitely like solid in that type of strategy. And then you know, I wonder if low color white decks play this at all, or if they just want the like Thalia effect, or if the turn.
Well, and it specifically says all spells, right? And like I think
Right.
it's much better because it does not say non-creature only, right? And I've had that situation come up a decent amount. Now there are times where this could protect a win, right? That's very bad. So you gotta pick and choose wisely. But that's why this card's good because it gives you the choice, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. But it'll be interesting. I'll be interested to see what people do with this.
Also, cool card with Delny too, right? Throw that out there.
But yeah, thanks. Next card is Leonardo da Vinci.
I'm gonna say right now, you did not have this on the set review, and I'm actually flabbergasted about that.
Okay, it's a 3/3 legendary human artificer that costs 2 generic and a blue. Has an activated ability that costs 3 generic and 2 blue to activate. And it says until end of turn, Thopters you control have base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. And then it has another activated ability where you can pay 2 generic and a blue. You tap it, draw a card, then discard a card. If the discarded card was an artifact card, exile it from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 0/2 Thopter artifact creature with flying in addition to its other types.
You look unenthused. What?
I don't know. Listen, I can only have so many mono blue commanders put in front of me.
Sure.
Until the end of time, where I just kind of feel like, but Urza, you know what I mean? Is just
I think this is way different than Urza. I think like if you're going to compare it to anything, it's like Arkham, right?
Sure. It's just like I look at it, I'm like, yep, that does the thing.
I think for me, this commander is like very much the like, oh yeah, I'll play the patient game plan. Like I'll loot maybe once or twice, put some value artifacts in the graveyard, get them back on the field. Obviously, this is a deck where you're going to want your Stifles and your Torpor because you're probably feeding the shit out of a Dockside, unfortunately. But importantly, unless I'm mistaken, this can be activated at instant speed, which I actually do really like. Yep. So there's like synergies there where you can like activate it and then like put a Phyrexian Metamorph in that's a copy of a Dockside and then like, you know what I mean, do some kind of nonsense like that. But realistically, the stuff that I'm very excited about is like the big artifacts, right? Like cheat in a Thopter version of Portal to Phyrexia, right? Or cheat in a God Pharaoh statue that's a 0/2, right? You can basically ignore the first ability of this card, if I'm being honest. But I do think a bunch of artifact creatures that are broken is really good. And also there are a number of combos for things like Chromatic Orrery, right? That usually have really weird cards where you have to turn an artifact into a creature to be able to go off in like these low color, colorless mono blue style decks, right? So the fact that Leonardo makes them a creature immediately off the bat is actually relevant for very specific niche pieces. Now, what it is bad at is giving them haste, right? Obviously, because creatures then suffer from summoning sickness. But it's not like you're going to be making your Mana Crypt into a Thopter, right? Like you're just going to play a Mana Crypt, right? like so, But things like Chromatic Orrery, as I mentioned, like those do need a turn to like kind of happen. But you can also just sit there on a Da Vinci activation and then like play mono blue tempo, right? Yeah.
No, I mean that's interesting.
I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world, but
I think the reason I'm skeptical of it is because you have to exile the card from your graveyard, and so if the token ever gets dealt with, you're just kind of like, well, that was cool.
For sure, absolutely, right? Like, and that is definitely a part of it, I guess. I think there's, you can already kind of want a piece like Karn in this deck anyways, right? So like there is a meta specific answer that you already probably were playing, which I don't hate, right? But, I think there's a little bit of legs to it, and I think it's one of the more interesting things to happen in Mono Blue in a long time, right? Like, yes, it's a cheaty artifact thing, but it's not really one that's had a design space explored with it, right? Mm-hmm. And, like, I think the first time someone, has their Thoracle blown out by a Platinum Angel at instant speed is going to be a really good time.
But then you have to play Platinum Angel in your deck.
Yeah, right. But, like, you're already playing Mono Blue cheaty artifacts, right? Like, why would you not?
Sure. Yeah,
and there's a good amount of redundancy too, right? Like there's we don't have Tinker, but we have Tinker-esque effects in Mono Blue.
We have Tinker,
right? So like, yeah, and so like it's not inherently commander dependent because you have things like Master Transmuter, right, that exist. that also do redundant versions of this effect, but now you have it in the command zone in a very unique way. So I think the card is really interesting, and I definitely will mess around with it a little bit. I think there's already people messing around with this commander from my sort of ear to the ground. So I do think it's going to be really interesting. Well, I'm excited to see kind of what happens with it.
Prove me wrong. I like being wrong. Listen, it's I don't like being right most of the time. I would love to not have to be a cynical prick. No, that's interesting. Next card. Okay, I didn't add this originally, and I'm glad you added it because I do think that this is. I don't think it's necessarily good, but I think it's interesting. And this is Loyal Inventor, which is a 2/3 human artificer. Costs 2 generic and a blue. It's set, has vigilance, and says whenever it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, then shuffle. Put that card into your hand if you control an assassin. Otherwise, put that card on top of your library. Yeah, I mean, this is like Trophy Mage on steroids, right? Like it's just go get an artifact, baby.
I think it's still really good, even with the downside of needing an assassin, right? Like I just don't think like they're low color decks. You kind of need stuff like this, right? And turns out a lot of low color blue decks you can draw, right? Like that is the thing. And also like, you know, there's very cute stuff. Like if you're playing Orvar, it automatically works, right? Which is like the best blue assassin I can think of, right? Not that I'm, playing Orvar anytime soon, but there are
coveted. I mean, hey, I mean that's a solid way to go get your coveted jewel, right? Like, I mean,
right, exactly, right. So it's like a card that exists. It's the first one of these ETB tutor and artifact effects that just gets whatever, right? Even with the downside of occasionally being a bad imp seal, right? And so like. And one of the reasons I like bringing it up is because like there's decks that want this, right? Like for example, I was rethinking about Grolnok again recently, right? Where like I
feel like once every other month you think about that frog.
I love Grolnok, but like you play this card, right? And like half of the win cons are artifacts, right? So like you go move to combat, attack, mill the top 3, exile an artifact that you tutored for, right? Like stuff like that. Like there are a bunch of decks in the format with like a very explicit synergy of playing this card, right? Of either drawing off the top or tutoring exactly what you need, right? And so like you don't always get the thing that tutors what you need perfectly, and this gets anything without restriction just takes a turn. So
yeah, no, I think that's super solid. I agree with everything that you just said. I was thinking about it when I was going through on my pass for our list earlier, and I was like, yeah, but it's got the restrictions, so like, I don't know. And then when you added it, I was like, oh, cool, yeah.
Yeah.
Next card we've got here is a card that I actually think is kind of interesting. I was kind of intrigued by this when I saw it. It's Shao Jun. So Shao Jun is a 3/3 human assassin, has 2 different abilities. First is as long as it's your turn, she has flying and first strike. And the second is tap 2 untapped artifacts you control. Shao Jun deals 1 damage to each opponent. So it's got kind of this, what's it called? The, what's that thing from Kaladesh? The 2 generic and a red, you tap 2 artifacts.
Gear for Aether Grid. Yeah,
Gear for Aether Grid.
Yeah, I mean the best part about Gear for Aether Grid is that you can shoot creatures, right? Unfortunately.
But this is kind of interesting. We were talking about this in our group chat, and at first Jeremy was like, I don't know about this, and you're like, but yeah, it also like breaks parity on orbs like really well.
Yeah, so like this is definitely the most interesting card in the set for me, which is funny because I was like, well, I don't know about most interesting, but definitely the one I want to build the commander deck around the most.
Same.
Because it's a dockside outlet, right? Like infinite treasures equals tapping all of those treasures for to
damage.
Yeah, the damage, right? So that part's kind of nice. There's also I know there's some other synergies in there as well. And this is another one of those things like we talked about with Arbaz, where it's like if you have weird combos that make a bunch of artifacts that are, traditionally we'd be like, oh, well, obviously we know infinite treasures goes infinite with a lot of decks, right? But like we don't really have a lot of research on like, you know, what makes infinite clues, because like normally those are not combos we give a shit about in cEDH, right? Or infinite, you know, food tokens or whatever it may be,
Or
right?
infinite thopters, right?
Right,
Like, you
right.
know.
Like infinite X artifact
Well,
tokens.
and one thing that Jeremy brought up that I thought was really interesting is that
Yeah.
it's a dockside and molten duplication outlet too. Or not dockside.
No, dual caster.
Dual
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
caster, dual caster,
Right,
dual
right,
caster, and
because
molten duplication.
yeah, because molten duplication makes whatever it's copying into an artifact, right? So you just make infinite copies of that, and this is a not necessarily instant speed line, but it is a second main phase win potential, right? So it doesn't have to necessarily go to combat through molten, which is cute. I definitely don't think it's bad by any means, and I think it just as I said, make some really interesting stuff. I'm definitely curious to see like. And I guess also worth mentioning it's an Ice-Crown Scepter outlet as well, right? Because you generate infinite mana, and then you can just start using the mana rocks you're untapping with Ice-Crown Scepter to just start tapping for damage instead.
Well, and I think this is a great example of like mana neutral combos, right? Because like you could have like as long as you have Scepter and a Soul Ring in like a
like 2 food tokens, right? Like you just win, right?
Yeah, you're just like cool. Or you have like I don't know why you would play it, but you have an Ornithopter and a Memnite, right?
Yeah,
like the game's over. You have a Darksteel Relic and another Paradise Mantle or whatever, you know.
Yep. And you know what was really interesting about Shao Jun, right?
Shao Jun.
Shao Jun, okay. What's really interesting about this character is that specifically, if you notice, it says that she deals damage to things, right? So this is another curiosity style commander, right? Slap a little curiosity on there and just start going to draw city, as some would say.
Draw city.
Draw city. It's also to be really mana efficient, right?
No, don't worry about me.
Okay. It's also pretty mana efficient, right? Like one red blue is like not that bad. We also have one of the things I'm most excited about is the fact that we did mention that this can be a little Urza Staxy kind of thing, right? But we also just got Winter Moon. We just got Harbinger of the Seas, right? So the is it sort of Blue Moon strategy also just got a little bit of a buff before this card even hit the field, right? So. I think
I actually think this is like probably the Blue Moon commander if I were to look for one, because of the fact that it lets you play the Blue Moon effects on top of the static orbs, the winter orbs, the Trinospheres, those sorts of things that you can break parity on.
Right, exactly. Now, definitely, same thing with Urza and decks like that. Be careful of your commander dying, but also be careful of going down to 1 artifact, because then you can no longer break parity on those things. But I still think it's a really cool commander. I think it's as I mentioned, the one I'm most excited to sort of take to the kitchen, So I think you and I will probably mess around with the build.
More than likely.
Assuming within the near future. And then, as I said, like I'm going to be, going and just Googling every single red-blue infinite artifact token deck, basically.
What makes infinite tokens cool? This is a cool commander. I think it looks really unassuming, and I think that's probably why a lot of people look at it and they're like, oh yeah, whatever. But I think like when you kind of read between the lines a little bit of this, I think there's a lot to be excited about with this commander.
Right,
it's a little bit differently than what was the commander from Outlaws that was red and blue that everybody was excited about.
Everyone was
the blue-red one that people have been playing.
Stella.
Yeah, Stella. Like I think Stella is just like on its face, like
explicitly,
right? But I think this is very like I think it's about like the same power level. It's just like not on its face the same way.
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite up to that level, but I'm optimistic.
Next card on our list is Alexios, Deimos of Kosmos. It is a 4/4 legendary human berserker that costs 3 generic and a red, has trample, and says whenever he attacks each combat, he attacks each combat if able and can't be sacrificed and can't attack its owner. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player gains control of Alexios, untaps it, and puts a +1/+1 counter on it. It gains haste until end of turn. So, God, I hate this so much.
They made a better slicer.
They made better slicer.
Yeah. Yeah. They also made better slicer that, let me see, what was the math? Does 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7, right? So that's 10, 22. They made better slicer that does 22 when it comes off a Winota trigger and the first rotation on the table. This is one of the quickest Winota ads I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah.
I'm still actively working on the list. I know some people have called me copium for it, but that's okay. I'm happy to be that. The deck's gotten a lot of new tools lately. And
yeah, I mean, playing Winota is copium. You're right.
But yeah, this is Slicer 2, and Slicer 1 was already like immediately has made itself like an uncuttable card from the strategy moving forward. So like
this
Slicer
is just
2,
straightforwardly better Slicer. So
yeah, yeah.
Don't have to worry about feeding a dockside.
Right, and one of the biggest downsides of Slicer 1, OG Slicer, the Slazizzle, was that you was often that, you know, a lot of people would just get to this point where they just start chum blocking, right? They just start chumping, and this one says, no. And not only that, like, you can give this one double strike, right? Mm-hmm. Like, not that that's like a specific, like I'm talking about if you're playing this in the command zone, right? Mm-hmm. You can give a double strike.
Please don't encourage people to play this in the command zone.
I honestly, like, this fixes a lot of the problems that Slicer definitely had. Not all of them. I cannot be explicit enough about that. Definitely not all of them. Unfortunately, also Modern Horizons 3 gave this type of strategy a lot of legs too. So
listen, we talked about last week that we have the power to bury things if we want to, and you know, again, you know, there's journalistic integrity, but like sometimes I gotta think about my own sanity sometimes, because every time I have to go to a tournament and sit down against a fucking Slicer deck, part of me dies because I always have to have the same conversation with the table. Guys, we have to spread this out because if we don't, we just die, we lose to it, and we do the thing, and they're like, oh no, I figured it out, I gotta kill you first, and it's like, no, that's not how this works. And then they lose, and it's just the same thing every time, and it drives me nuts. Anyway,
and here's the great part though. You as the editor of this episode definitely have the power to remove this, but I
do have editorial.
But now it's up to me to bring it up every 3 to 5 minutes to make sure that the episode is so scuffed without it. I'm gonna tag you on Twitter right after and be like, oh, I can't wait for everyone to hear about the Alexio session.
Reference it in like every video you post.
Right. Yeah. Even on my own channel, I'd be like, oh yeah, if you want to hear my thoughts on Alexios that I go really in depth on and the Mind Sculptors.
Just like open every episode that way. Just like, man, Alexios is such a cool card. Go check out the Mind Sculptors Assassin's Creed net review for my thoughts. Honestly, it'd be funnier if you did that and we cut this whole segment.
Oh my god.
Oh my. Next card on our list, this is a card you're excited about, is
ish.
I'm just gonna call it the Triad because I'm not even gonna try to say the first word correctly. It's a God Artificer that's a 7/7 that costs 10 generic mana. It does, the spell costs 1 less to cast for each historic card in your graveyard. And it says exile any number of historic cards from your graveyard with total mana value 30 or greater. You get an emblem with creatures you control have base power and toughness 9/9. So what are you like this? You posted about this on Twitter. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so it's a weirdie. I don't think at the end of the day it's probably gonna get there, right? But the idea is that you play like pretty early on, you play just like shops style colorless stacks, right? So you play your Trinispheres and your Mesmeric
traditionally great deck in this format.
Yeah, shush. Shush. I don't want to hear from you. But then you also play like your Phyrexian Altars, and you play your Mesmeric Orbs and Grinding Stations and stuff like that, right? And so like for like the first, you know, X amount of unbearable turns, you're just going like, no, nobody casts spells, right? Nobody does anything to advance their game. We're just going to sit here twiddling our thumbs. I'm going to play a Milliken and you're going to be happy about it, right? But I will say, like, when you get a critical mass of artifacts, this does, like, technically like non-deterministically go infinite with Phyrexian Altar, right? Or no, Altar of Dementia, pardon me. I think I said Phyrexian Altar earlier, right? Because it costs 1 less for every historic card in your graveyard, right? So as soon as you get like 8, 9, 10, right? Like you can then start being like, all right, cool, like sack, pitch it, replay it from the command zone. As long as you hit 2 more historic permanents, you can do it again, right? Like over and over and over again, right? It's kind of buck wild, right? But it's definitely like a Rube Goldberg-esque machine, right? It would take a lot of work to make it functional. I'm not in denial of any of those facts. But then also, like by the time you're done like milling like a good portion of your deck, you're like, cool, exile 30 mana value, which is considerably easier than it might look, and you don't even have to really do the whole Altar of Dementia thing. You get 30 mana value, and you're like, all right, cool. All of these, stacks creatures that I've played throughout the game, my Phyrexian Revokers and my Lodestone Golems and my whatever sort of artifact I've played is now just a 9/9 forever, right? Like, because it's an emblem, right? Like, unless I'm crazy.
That is how emblems work.
Yeah, it is an emblem, right? So, like, that's just never going away, right? So, my dorky little 1/1, my Hope of Giripur is a 9/9 now. Like, this is the clock. The game's over, right? Takes a lot of setup, is super convoluted. I think it's cool.
Is this a Yuriko card?
It can't be. Is it?
I'm with you. I'm like, it can't be. But then I'm like looking at it and I'm like, well, I mean, if you're playing like Emrakul and you're playing those big hits, it's not that hard.
I love that if you're already, we're assuming you're already playing Emrakul.
Well, yeah, because we're making Yuriko not shit. So we're making it better, and we're taking like the one with mortality or whatever the fuck it is, shadow morality or whatever the fuck that card's called. We're taking that out because it's not good. It doesn't do anything outside of being a hit. We're playing. Why did nobody build like no bad cards Yuriko, and we have like all these just fucking kill me. Anyway, I'm just like looking at this and I'm like, I don't know.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah, but then I'd have to play Yuriko, which is like
true.
Is that where I want to be in the world? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just food for thought. Listen, I was up till 3 a.m. playing Crusader Kings last night. So I'm definitely awake. That was the last of our creatures. Let's move over into the sorcery section. Kicking us off here, we've got Petty Larceny. This is one of the free running spells. It costs 3 generic and a black, and its free running cost is a generic and a black. And reminder, free running is you may cast a spell for its free running cost if you dealt damage to a player this turn with an assassin or commander. And it says, look at the top 2 cards of target opponent's library and exile those cards face down. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast them. Create a treasure token. That's an interesting little, that's sorcery. Yeah.
What?
It's a
cool, okay.
It's a cool little guy.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, 2 cards for 2 mana and a treasure. I
mean, it's nothing to, nobody's going to write a great saga about it, but I mean, like it's a, you can tell I've been playing Crusader Kings because I was just like, oh, they're going to write a saga about it.
Yeah, you know what deck this actually is pretty good in, huh? Yuriko.
You're not wrong. Like, actually, the free running cards in Yuriko are like kind of nuts.
Yeah, I think honestly, like they're really good for any. And we're going to talk about this more and more, and especially with I think the next one's the best one by far. And it's just like any sort of evasive, doinky little commander starts to make these look good as long as
I mean, think about this in like Ob Nixilis, right? Like think about this in like
think about it for fucking Malcolm decks, right? Like that's
Malcolm. Think about this in like I mean, obviously there's like some inherent synergy because with stuff like Prosper, obviously. Which every casual in the world just let out a collective sigh of at the same time. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, I mean, like these free running cards are pretty good. Like
I actually think they're like kind of underspoken about realistically. I think like the fact that they say Aura Commander is kind of big.
It's kind of notable.
Yeah, let's talk about the next one too. This is
Eagle,
the one I'm
Eagle Vision. This is a sorcery that costs 4 generic and a blue, but also its free running costs is a generic and a blue, and it says draw 3 cards.
Yeah, 2 mana, draw 3.
2 mana Ancestral Recall is better than not
having an Ancestral Recall.
Yeah, exactly.
It's my biggest qualm with these is like, damn, I'm upset the Tymna decks get better. But the good thing about these is Tymna decks won't be playing these because they're ad nauseam decks, right? So like that's the sort of beautiful irony.
But this is why it's like beautiful in like a Malcolm Tymna, right? Because like Malcolm Tymna shouldn't be a nauseam deck, and so it's just kind of like,
well, I don't know that. Yeah,
it doesn't Esper decks don't nause particularly well is kind of my pitch. But
I think Esper decks traditionally don't know as well. I think Malcolm Tymna might be the one exception, but that's separate conversation for a different time.
Yeah. Listen, we talked about why Malcolm Tymna is
too much. Yeah.
We've gone on. There's plenty of places where you can find us talking about Malcolm Tymna on this channel,
as well as plenty of places where you can find me talking about Alexios, one of the new cards from this set.
Just like earlier in the set review. I'm like tempted to cut it now because I think it's like funnier.
No,
to not have.
I will not be silenced.
But yeah, no, these cards are pretty sweet, and obviously, like Ancestral Recall is like good. Like I think that is not a hot take.
I think this is like one of the best cards to happen for Malcolm decks in general, though. Like I think with a big problem with that strategy is that it's so evasive and it struggles with card advantage. And here we go with just like bonk, draw 3. Like it's just clean. It is clean and easy, and I love it.
And again, straightforwardly good in Europe. Just easy add to Yuriko. Take out that Shadow of Mortality, put in a good card that functions, that does something.
Also just flips for 5, right? Like sick. That's exactly what I'm gonna do.
You just dealt 50 damage. That's better than your 45 damage that you deal collectively, but you get maybe once in a tournament and doesn't do anything outside of that. I'm sure Yuriko pilots are going to be in our comments. They're just like, Shadow of Mortality is actually great, and here's why. And it's
we piss off one fringe deck an episode, and that's okay. Like that's there's always at least 13 zealots at our door trying to
there were
drag
people
us
in
out
last week's episode that were just like, you don't lose, a crick doesn't lose to itself, it loses to its pilots. And I was like, shut the fuck up.
I guess it just loses to all of its pilots.
I guess it just pilots suck, man. I don't know what to do.
I think you might need to have a restructuring of the team if that's the case.
If you're trying to tank, let you know there's no draft picks. You can't, there's no, what was it the Sixers used to say? Trust the process. There's no trust the process here.
If you just get the top 10 players in the world to all play crick, it's
there was a comment too last week. I'm going off topic just because this make me think about it. But there was a comment last week that was just like, with the stats that you really should do is control for player skill. And I was just like, how in God's name do you want to do that? And also, how do you want to define that? Because it's so fucking arbitrary that just you can't do that. It's
like, I don't know if we should count Jerry. Jerry really does suck. And it's like, how many of those do you think we have the omniscient power to just blast people out of space, right? Like,
my wife, who's a researcher, read that comment and was just like, I cannot think of a single way that you could do this and it be like not arbitrary in some way.
No, Cal, what you don't understand is that
the data didn't say what I liked.
Yeah.
So, the data didn't reflect my opinion, and therefore the data is wrong. But Cal's opinion, which is informed by data, that's wrong.
I see no problems here.
Yeah, that's, next card, more free running. I almost called it forerunning. I don't know what forerunning is. It's
3 running, 4 running, 5 running. Everybody run.
Forerunning is when you have, those Halo guys.
Yeah,
that come
yeah.
up and they're
Well,
like,
no,
we're the Forerunners.
Forerunning is when you free run, but they say actually there's a tax on that and it's 4%.
That joke is great because it assumes that people understand that you're like, no, not free running, 3 running. It's great. So
Anyways, this card has 4 running.
But it actually does cost 3 mana for its free running ability.
Yeah.
It costs 2 generic and a red for its free running ability. Mana cost is 3 generic and 2 red. And it says untap all creatures you control that attack this turn. If it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase, followed by an additional main phase. What's
Does your deck take extra combats? Well, have I got a card for you that's cheap?
Free running, free. I'm doing the Veggie Tales. Veggie Tales,
Good, yes. Our target demographic, VeggieTales.
Listen, we are a Christian scooter podcast.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So think of free running as that time when you get on the scooter for, and you feel the air rushing through your. Anyways, this is really good in decks like Narset and shit like that want like that kind of extra combat bullshit. It's a really efficient version of this effect. It's also cheap and can probably see play in other decks because it's cheap.
Yeah, it's 35
right?
cents.
Yeah, Grim Reaper's Sprint is like another. Shut the fuck up.
It took you a second.
No, it didn't take me a second. I tried to power through it and then I got mad. Anyways, moving on to the instant.
Oh man, that's a short. That's a short if I've ever seen one.
I will also say we have a couple more free running cards in the sort of sideboard and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a really cool thing, and sometimes your commander will be evasive, and therefore this mechanic
is good in those decks.
Is good in your deck.
It's good in Yuriko.
So if you have a commander that can hit your opponents,
like
maybe
Yuriko.
Like Yuriko. Also, actually, there's one I really want to highlight for Yuriko specifically is escape detection, which Cal, you can flash it up on screen now. But like, we don't talk about it too much. That's literally like I bounce my Yuriko so that I can then later ninjutsu it and then like. Blah, 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 blah. Anyways,
and draw a card.
And draw a card.
It's a 3 running. Free running.
Okay. Free running is a good mechanic.
Free runnings. It's like cool runnings, but it's free.
I have been trying not to make a cool runnings joke for like the past 15 minutes. If your commander is really good in the bobsled, then you want to check out.
What are you smoking, man? I'm not smoking. I'm breathing. I love that movie so.
Great movie. I love Cool Running.
Oh my gosh, we are just pop culturing it out today. Desynchronization is an instant that costs 2 generic and 2 blue, and it says return each non-land permanent that's not historic to its owner's hand. Just a reminder: artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic.
Oh wow, yeah,
that's a lot of stuff.
I think this is like kind of what everyone wanted Filter out to be. Yeah. If I'm being honest, like this is specifically, I think for slightly more proactive decks, I think this is a pretty solid card, right? Like end step before my turn, say I'm playing, and now before the Rogsai palace jump up my asshole. I'm not saying specifically Rogsai, but a Rogsai-esque deck, right? Like end step before my turn, I go, oh, there's a Dranith, and there's obviously not someone's commander, but like there's a Dranith and some sort of rule law effect, and there's a Rhystic Study and a Mystic Remora right on the battlefield, and I just have my commander and a bunch of fast mana, right? Just go, okay, cool, end step, desync, bounce all the stuff that I don't want there. All the artifacts stay, all the enchantments leave. Enchantments are usually the stuff that stops us more anyways than some of the artifacts. Now occasionally you'll run into a Graph Digger's Cage, something like that like ruins your day, but realistically the Dranniths and the Oppos and all of the Dranniths and the Oppos, it's like fucking Bill Cosby. Not that he sounds, you can cut that. You can just cut that. We're too punchy this episode. Anyways, it blows out those types of effects that are more likely to stop a very proactive list, right? And the fact that it's an instant, it makes it kind of better than other things that have existed before, right? And unlike things like Filter Out and stuff like that, it doesn't bounce all your own shit, right? Which is always kind of the problem with effects like that, right? I don't want to bounce my Arcane Signets, my Grim Monoliths, my One Rings, my blah, 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 right? Like all that stuff, I want to have it. It's mine. Desync then goes like, it's
my mana. Use it when I need it. Or however, that's how that goes.
It. No criticisms. You perfectly got it.
Yeah, I got it perfectly.
I think also in like a Talion deck, I think this is also really good, right? Like, because the things that you care about on the field for Talion are like your Staxy artifacts, your mana rocks, and like the only thing you're like, oh no, my Blood Chief Ascension or my Mystic Remora, right? But like the rest of the stuff, you're like,
oh no, I reset my Mystic Remora. Darn it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess Heuristic Study is the one you care about more so, right? But yeah, I think the card's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. The art's really neat. Next card on the list, Apple of Eden, Isu Relic.
Now, Cal, before the show, you said, Ian, this is the best card in the set. I can't wait.
This is the best card in the deck by so far. I just, when I saw this card get printed, I was just immediately like, wow, this is going to be the card that breaks cEDH. And genuinely speaking, we were kind of talking about beforehand. We were like, do we want to talk about this or not? And I was like, yeah, it might be interesting. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's a legendary artifact that costs 4 generic. You can activate an ability, you tap it, pay 4 life, and sack it. Look at target opponent's hand and exile those cards face down. You may play those cards this turn, and mana of any type can be spent to cast them. Till end of turn, whenever you play a land or cast a spell this way, its owner draws a card. At the beginning of the next end step, return the exiled cards to their owner's hand, which is all really cool. It sounds great, except you can only activate it only as a sorcery, which sucks. But there's some interesting applications of it.
I think like one of the things I think is kind of fascinating is like it's one of those cards in Magda that you can like snipe out and then you just like rip apart each opponent's hands and recur that over and over again.
Right.
It's like a defensive piece. It's not like huge, right? I do think there is a world in which like you are playing something like hyper specific pull here, but like Tasha the Witch Queen, right? Where it's like I care about casting cards from exile, right?
Wow, that really was a hyper specific pull.
Yeah, right. But like that's one of those decks where I've always been kind of on the lookout for. Sorry, my desk just unplugged, so that's why I'm talking sideways. But it's
I just have one of those old fashioned, regular unpowered decks or desks. I just have one of those old, put together with screws and wood.
Welcome to the future, old man.
No, I agree with you. I think Magda is a really interesting place for this deck, honestly, because like it kind of functions in more of a like, I know my opponents might have interaction here, so I can eat that interaction by like throwing this out and getting rid of it. Then I can take their interaction, which is kind of neat. And the funny thing is that this also can trigger your dockside because of your dockside, your bowmasters, because if you're casting spells out of your opponent's hands, it's gonna make them draw a card, which will trigger a bowmaster. So it's
that's what I'm saying. Like the face value of the card's not that like hyper appealing, but like it triggers paradox, it triggers like stuff like that. Like there's a lot of like weird applications for it, right? Prosper also, right? You cast things from exile.
Yeah, again, it's a card where I was like, I don't know how real it is, but it's like interesting enough that I kind of want to talk about it. Because there's like some like on its face like interesting value there where you can just kind of like be like, fuck your hand. which, you know, as a control player, I love.
Yeah, I love saying "fuck your hand" to people. For
Yeah,
sure.
I read your palm. Fuck that hand. Next card on the list is it is stupid. You're correct. Next card on the list is Crystal Skull.
Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull.
Took my joke. God damn it! Gotta let me finish what I'm saying. Crystal Skull, Ice Use Spyglass. It is a legendary artifact that costs 2 generic and 2 blue. It says you may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may play historic lands and cast historic spells from the top of your library. And it also taps for blue. So that's nice. It's like Mystic Forge, but a little slightly. It's, I don't know. I'd say it's better, but it's like Mystic Forge.
I definitely think it's way better. It's, you know, just as tutorable, right? I think the decks that, like the low color blue decks that want this type of effect, really want this type of effect, and having it a tutorable mana value is very good. Not only that, but like a tutorable mana value that
for what it's worth, it is the exact same mana value as Mystic Forge.
Well, I understand that part, right? But like, it's more flexible than Mystic Forge, right? It's any historic permanent, right? So you can cast Legends off the top, you can cast Sagas, but like realistically,
well, I think the notable part personally is the you may play historic lands part of it. Specifically because of the fact that you can just clear shit off the top of your library. You don't like kind of get nearly as like, obviously there's like the whole you can only play 1 land per turn, but like that can be huge because guess what? We don't really play a ton of lands in cEDH, so it's like being able to clear a land off the top, I think is like
could get you several more. It's a huge deal. Right? And then also like it tapping for mana, I think is very real as well, right? So I think this card's like really good for the decks it's really good in. Obviously, you know, every one of those like combos with Sensei's top decks wants this, right? Like, it's exactly, you know, it's the same-ish as it always is.
Same as it ever was.
Same as it ever was. As the days go by. I think it's my new goal to sing as much of a song before we get copyright struck as possible.
See, the back of my head is like, if we sing enough different songs, they can't all copyright us, right? Like,
ooh, famous last words.
Right?
They can't all sue us. If we shit on every deck in the format, they can't all be mad in the comments.
Yeah, it's the South Park mentality. We make fun of everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fuck those Arden players.
Now, hold on.
Oh, no. We lost them.
Last card on our list, it's the land here. It's Abstergo Entertainment. It's a legendary land. You can tap it for colorless. It also, you can pay a generic and tap it to add 1 of any color. And then you can pay 3 generic and tap it, exile it, and return up to 1 target historic card from your graveyard to your hand. Then exile all graveyards. This is a card that you posted about on Twitter because you are excited about it.
So I like this card specifically in Sisei because one of the things that we've been dealing with for a long time in Sisei is that you have no you have no way to tutor up a permanent that will from Sisei that will allow you to pick up Oath of Teferi or Nicol Bolas from your graveyard if things go wrong, or Aminatou the same way actually. That doesn't kind of suck, right? Like that doesn't just lower your card quality in the deck, right? Or take up a slot that could be otherwise used, right? So now this is a land that, yes, it does tap for generic mana, and that's not great, but it does also filter into one of your 5 colors, which, like, if you play the deck enough, you know sometimes you just have a bunch of Soul Ring Crypt mana that you could use to filter into colored mana anyways, right? So I like that part of the deck of the card for sure. Also, just like incidental nuke a yard during a breach combo is like really not bad either, right? It's like 8 mana to make it happen, but it's still legit, right?
What do you mean 8 mana?
Tutor Sisei and then activate.
Oh, okay. I'm here now. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. it.
I was like, but it's 3 mana to activate, and you're like,
No,
yeah,
no,
there's 5 more that you're not thinking about.
Right. But that's the idea with it. I think it's pretty solid. You know, I definitely could dislike it a lot more. I think it's a card that will definitely probably at least be tested right away. I'm hoping that it's you know, we have enough sort of lands that fix our colors appropriately that we can afford it, but it's definitely gonna be a little bit tough to squeeze into a 5-color deck for sure.
For sure. Now, speaking of Sisay, because this will be coming out after the good old Cowtown Throwdown, whose name I don't have any qualms with, and I think it's a great name. No notes. And what are you playing this weekend?
Well, because Alexios, the card that I've talked about earlier in this episode, is not
Great
currently
Sisay card.
Great
Great
Sisay card. Because that's not available for me, in which I would be personally thriving if it was. We are
really
looking
Sisay over the edge.
Yeah. No, we're playing Sisay. I have my build called Corgi Sisay, Master of Puppos and Good Little Woofers, because I'm playing Ophelia in it, and it's one of the new cards from MH3.
That is the most millennial name you could have possibly given it.
Yeah, for sure.
There are times
I could throw in more hashtags, to be fair.
Oh, I believe you. There are times where you will say something, I'm like, wow, I really do connect with the youth more than Ian does. I'm more in touch with Gen Z than Ian. Ian's a lot more like full-blown millennial bullshit.
Listen, I have never been an internet kid, right? So like the fact that I do that as a job is exhausting for me. I'm not hip with the memes. I used to work in childcare, and I would for sure make way more dad jokes than I would relevant references.
Man. You don't even know what POG means. That's so...
I do know what POG means. Shut the fuck up.
I had to teach you what POG means.
No, you did. What? Get out of here. You did not.
But yeah, playing Sisay this weekend. We talked about, like, I think it was... I mean, I know we talked about it last week, but Sisay feels like it's in a pretty good spot.
Yep, I've also got a secret Nadu package in the deck, which I think is pretty funny.
I think we're going to be seeing those more in decks as time
it's
progresses.
because Greaves is kind of a card you wanted to play anyways in the list, right?
And now you just have a good reason to play it.
Yeah, now you have a reason to play it, because then sometimes you're just like, I literally was goldfishing ahead yesterday where I was like, I think I just turned 3, start Naduing, and I was like, I think I've drawn like 13 cards off of it. Like, no,
I was talking with Phoenix the last few days about Nadu in the 99, and the deck that I actually thought it was like the most interesting in was like, most interesting that I was kind of interested in like looking at it was I was like, hey, this actually kind of gives me like a direction for Arden Thrasios, because it's like something that we've always struggled with that deck is like, okay, so like what the fuck are you doing? And now you have a very clear answer, which is just like you have this really clear tutor package that all gets like these pieces that work with Nadu that also just kind of happen to layer fairly well with your commanders. So you just kind of layer all of that together. We have like a preliminary build put together that Phoenix was cold fishing a lot last night, and I definitely was interested in it. I don't know that I don't cook as much crystal meth as Phoenix does.
yeah, for sure.
You know, I love Phoenix and I love Cobblepot and I love all those guys, but sometimes
they're for sure. They're deep in the kitchen.
And that's what's funny is people are like, man, Cal, you really just living out there on the edge playing those Arden decks. And I'm like, I think I'm playing the most like safe thing, honestly, that's like fringe.
I think of the people we're acquainted with for sure. Yeah.
It's like, come on. But no, there's sometimes he'll send me a card and I'm just like, I don't know about this one, Phoenix. But yeah, I kind of like the direction of Arden Thrasios right now. And it kind of makes me excited to play that deck, which I don't know that I've ever said as a fan of Arden. So, you know, it kind of builds some bridges that I think that was missing in the past. So how much Nadu are you expecting this weekend?
Oh, literally everyone I've talked to about prepping for this weekend has been like, so how much should I expect to face against Nadia? And I was like, the fact that all of you are asking means everybody's honking up a storm at this one. They're all coming in with birds for sure. Yeah, bring your plummets, bring your rending volleys. Like,
so how prepared should I be? Right? Like, yeah. It'll be interesting. I mean, I'm curious to do a stat breakdown of that event afterwards, because I tend to, on those bigger top deck events, like to just kind of do like full meta breakdowns of the events.
yeah,
Right?
that makes sense.
With that being said, also we are about to hit 9,000 subscribers, and I think it would be really cool if by the end of this year we hit 10,000 subscribers. So
Yeah, hit that fifth dig.
if you are watching the show and you're not subscribed, help a brother out, help a friend out. You watched this far. The least
Listen. If you're not subscribed,
after all of
subscribing is free running. You know what I mean? Like, subscribing costs 0 running, right? And that's the kind of stuff you can get. Free running. Yep. Anyways, yeah, you can free run your way over to that like button, that subscribe button. You can even hit that little bell if you're like, hey, I haven't figured out that every Monday they drop episodes at the same time.
9 a.m., baby.
But you can do that. You can hit that little ding-a-ling, and you'll get a little notification that says like, hey, that shit's in your inbox now. Let's go.
Little bling-a-ling.
Little bling-a-ling. And then if you wanna do a little paid running, if you want to go up to 1, 2, 3, 4 running, all of that stuff, you can check out patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors, and my joke will be so bad that it completely removes Callahan from this episode.
Don't worry, I'm here. It's just
fully yeets them into the.
No, I'm here. It's just my. This is so funny. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so my camera what the fuck?
I know what's going on.
Well, I can't change my audio or my video in the middle of the. I listen. I guess I don't have a video the rest of this because I managed to move a Coke can, and it did enough to jostle the USB cable so that my camera disconnected enough that it went to my fucking capture box for my PlayStation, which makes total sense. Anyway.
All right, Cal, this squid is you for the rest of the episode. Oh, good point, Cal.
So anyway, you were talking about going to patreon.com.
Yes, good point, Callahan the Squid. I was talking about going to patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors if you want to get perks like the ones that I am aware of, and like that Cal is aware of as well.
Excuse me, my legal name is Dr. Squid the Octopus.
Oh yes, good point, Cal Squid. If you want to support the remaining of Alexios in this episode, you can check out Patreon. Oh, we are so punchy this episode. I love it. You can check out the Mind Sculptors where, despite... actually, you know what? You get the bullshit included, and you know that.
The bullshit is a feature, not a bug.
Good point, Cal.
Excuse me. Use my Christian name, Dr. Squid the Octopus.
Dr. Squid the Octopus, Lahan. Oh, man. Okay.
Hey,
well,
where can people get cEDH coaching and stuff, Ian?
Yeah, if you heard sort of any of the hot wisdom that I've been dropping this episode, and you think, yeah, I want a more more concrete way of
Why aren't you talking to
understanding
me right now, Ian? Where did I go? Why did you put me away?
So sorry.
Are you ashamed? Are you ashamed of what God made me?
I'm sorry, you're just a little short, so I gotta kind of push you. That's not gonna. Never work with your friends. You can't get anything done.
Sweaty with CEDH coaching, right?
Oh man, I think this is the first time I've cried on the show since the Rose episode. Holy shit. Okay. Anyways, yeah, if you want cEDH coaching, I do that professionally. Currently, I'm number 2 on the leaderboard right now for all of the top deck circuit. Hoping to be number 1 by the end of the Cowtown Throwdown. We'll see what happens there, and obviously, if it's after that week and I'm not that, then I've done something wrong. But anyways, if you are interested in cEDH coaching, I have more experience on more decks than any other of my contemporaries. Played a bunch of different archetypes. If you are playing a deck in cEDH, I've probably played it at some point. So if you're interested in receiving coaching, come check me out at any of the places that Cal is lovely enough to put in the description. But to list off a few, ComedianMTG@gmail.com. You can find me at Twitter or Instagram at ComedianMTG or at Comedian_MTG over on Discord, all of those places. Yeah, it's been really awesome. Last weekend, I had multiple people in my coaching circle make the top cut of the Laughing Dragon Expo at Tacoma, which was really cool. So it's been really awesome, and I'm feeling really grateful for what I do, and I love working with my clients. I'm really proud of all of them. So it's been awesome.
And the best part is you get to work with Dr. Squid the Octopus.
Yeah, so true. So true. Dr. Squid the Octopus has never hired me, to be fair.
Yeah, well, that's because Dr. Squid the Octopus works with you, right?
That's fair. That's also fair.
I'm too busy swimming.
Dr. Squid the Octopus is in the kitchen with me almost always.
But yeah, go check out Ian. Ian does great work, and thank you all for watching. And with all that being said, I'm Dr. Squid the Octopus.
And I'm Ian.
We'll see you next week.
Remember, don't swim too deep or Cal will get you.
This is Mind Sculptors. We'll see you next week.